My fiance, James, 28 male, and I, 26 female, just got engaged and we were over the moon about our upcoming wedding. We were deeply in love and ready to embark on the lifelong journey together. However, a recent incident involving my future in-laws has made me question our entire relationship. To provide context, James and I both hail from working class backgrounds, but our family dynamics are starkly distinct. My parents taught me to work hard and be independent, fostering a sense of self-reliance. They never interfered in my life unless I specifically asked for their help. I had been working ever since I was 16 years old and moved out of my parents' house when I was 18 to stand on my own 2 feet. In contrast, James's parents followed a very hands-on approach. From an early age, they instilled in him the importance of adhering to their values and traditions. If he didn't follow their rules, then he was harshly punished. Growing up, James found himself subject to their continuous attempts to control his life. His parents believed in dictating every move he made. This control extended beyond just the typical guidance parents offer. It bordered on a level of interference that left little room for James to make decisions independently. They controlled his financial situation as well. His parents controlled how much money James spent from his income every month. When I first got to know James, he was upfront about his parents right from the start. Back then, we were just casually dating, so I didn't give it much thought. But as things started to get more and more serious between us, I started to realize the hold his parents had over him. His mom had this routine of calling him every night at 8 p.m., insisting he return home for dinner with the family. Even when James tried explaining that we had plans and we were just going to grab a bite, she'd shut it down. Her response was always a firm no, accompanied by a reminder that he had to come home or else he would be kicked out. Another example would be when James called me one day in obvious pain. He was dealing with a severe stomachache and had been suffering the entire day. Shockingly, his parents insisted that a trip to the hospital was unnecessary, convinced that modern medicine wouldn't be of any help. Moreover, they actively discouraged him from spending money on medical bills. I couldn't wrap my head around how they could watch their son in pain and not do anything about it. I had to leave work and rush to his place to get him to the hospital in time. This was very weird for me, as I had never seen an adult being so tightly controlled in life. When I asked James about the reason behind his parents' behavior, he shared that both of them had grown up in a cult. The strict rules from their upbringing seemed hard for them to let go of and change. While I couldn't fully grasp the situation, I recognized it wasn't my role to interfere or pass judgment on his family. As our relationship deepened, we wanted to spend more time with each other and eventually decided that we would move in together. I had my own apartment, while John resided with his parents. We settled on him moving in with me. Little did I know that it wasn't as easy as it seemed. James's parents were furious upon learning that he planned to move out, and their anger was directed more at me than at James. They invited me over for dinner so they could talk with me. When they brought up the subject, I stood my ground despite being nervous. I firmly told them that James and I were in love and deserved to have our own space. Linda, James's mom, made it clear that she disapproved of our relationship because, according to her, women shouldn't be breaking up families. James's father, Robert, proceeded to inquire about my life, family, and career. I answered them all with honesty. To my surprise, his dad then turned to John and commented that his issue with me was because I am a career woman. His father then loudly stated that he didn't want his son to be involved with a selfish woman like me who wasn't taught by her family to put men over my own needs. I stared at Robert, wide-eyed, trying to comprehend the judgmental words coming from him. His father continued that I was the devil for forcing his son to move away from his parents. He said how James was supporting both of them with their money, and I had no right to ask him to move in with me. I had kept quiet out of respect for James, but their comments were starting to bother me. Thankfully, this is when John interjected to say that this wasn't true and he loved me. So the plan to move in with me was completely his decision. I nodded and firmly announced to both of them that John was an adult and it was his decision to move out if he wanted to. I then told Robert that I respected his opinion about his son and James could always continue to help them financially even if he wasn't living with them. James then took my hand and announced that he was going to go through with this decision, and it was final. I could see Robert's and Linda's disdain on their faces. They looked at him with disappointed expressions. I couldn't help but feel proud of him for standing up for himself. Since James moved into my place, our lives have become much more simpler. Over the last few years, I have witnessed a positive change in him. He's no longer reliant on his parents for every decision. We live in our own little cocoon, shielded away from his parents and their judgments, while his mother still continues to call him at 8 p.m. daily like clockwork. I have learned to live with it. James sends money to his parents every month like the good son he is. Over the years, James has come to spend more and more time with my family. My parents are much more laid back and absolutely adore James. He's always pleasantly surprised by how supportive my parents are and has grown to enjoy their company. It's been a delightful shift from the judgmental atmosphere he was accustomed to. My brothers love inviting John on their weekend fishing trips. Overall, James has blended well with my family. Now, coming on to the incident in hand. After we got engaged, we shared the news on social media and called our parents. My parents were overjoyed and my mom dove right into wedding plans. On the other hand, James appeared to be having a heated discussion with his parents. I couldn't catch the details, but I figured they had some concerns about me as usual. I decided to trust James to handle it and opted not to get involved in the conversation. Since the phone call, James appeared more subdued. I questioned him multiple times, sensing something was amiss, but he continued to deny any issues. I didn't think much about it until last week when he told me that his parents wanted to come over for lunch. I was taken aback because in recent years they had neither visited us nor acknowledged my existence. Nonetheless, I felt happy, thinking that perhaps, now that I was going to be their daughter-in-law, they wanted to sit down and get to know me better. On the day they were supposed to have lunch with us, I took a leave of absence from work so I could prepare a grand meal for his parents. I cooked an array of dishes, including a hearty lasagna, flavorful roasted vegetables, and a decadent chocolate cake for dessert. My aim was for them to be thoroughly impressed with my cooking skills and hopefully never question my ability to take care of James in the future. Upon their arrival, I greeted them warmly and welcomed them in. They appeared awkward and out of place and looked around my house disapprovingly. I noticed that James seemed more nervous than usual, which was understandable as they had never been to our place. They didn't talk much and we had our meal quietly. James's mother did make a few comments on how she disliked my dishes, yet continued to wipe the plate clean. I politely apologized, trying to keep the atmosphere as pleasant as possible. After the meal, Robert asked if he could take a tour around the house, to which I readily agreed. We strolled through each room and he examined them closely. Then we all settled in the living room. Robert cleared his throat and asked me to show him my finances. I looked at him curiously, struggling to grasp his request initially. He went on to explain that he didn't want just anybody marrying his son, and he expected me to share my financial details with them. I was taken aback by Robert's unexpected request. My eyes widened in disbelief as I tried to comprehend what he was asking. I have always been open with James about how much I earn, which is 2 times more than his salary, my investments and my savings. Hence, I never thought it was necessary to tell his parents. The idea of sharing my personal information with my future in-laws left me shocked and uneasy. This had never happened with me before, as my parents never asked James to show his financial details when we got engaged. I exchanged glances with James, hoping for some support or intervention, but he remained uncomfortably silent. The air in the room grew thick with tension as I grappled with the intrusive nature of this demand. I hesitated for a moment, but ultimately agreed to their invasive request. Reluctantly, I presented documents detailing my assets and savings, allowing them a glimpse into my financial life. I watched as Robert and Linda's eyes widened in surprise, and I couldn't help but feel a tinge of pride. All the years of hard work since the age of 16 have allowed me to save a considerable amount of money, showcasing my dedication and diligence. I hoped this would alleviate their concerns about our future together. But little did I know what would unfold next. To my bewilderment, the situation took an unexpected turn. Robert and Linda, after scrutinizing my financial records, shockingly demanded that post-marriage I give up full control over my finances. My brows furrowed in confusion as their words sunk in. They went on to explain that women in their families don't manage their money, so I should let them take care of us for our own benefit. The absurdity of their demands left me speechless. I urged them to clarify further, and Robert boldly stated that I was marrying his son now, and this is what they followed in their family. As the supposed head of the family, he declared his intention to take charge of all financial matters. Stunned, I turned to James, anticipating his intervention, only to find him sitting quietly. When I asked for his input, to my astonishment, he appeared unfazed, stating that, as his wife-to-be, his parents wished to guide our lives. Linda then started saying that they wanted to move in with us after marriage so that I could take care of them like any dutiful wife. Robert nodded in agreement and suggested that it was a good idea for me to stop working after marriage. He explained that with my savings they could sustain themselves until James found a better opportunity. Shocked, I stared at them with my mouth open as Linda continued outlining her vision for our wedding, insisting it be held in a church or she wouldn't attend. With each passing second, I could feel my frustration rising, and James remained frustratingly passive. Pleadingly, I looked at him, torn between respect for my in-laws and standing up for myself. To my dismay, he appeared to be dismissing my concerns. He whispered that his parents wanted the best for us and that he had no problems with their demands. I couldn't bear to hear them any longer. I decided to take matters into my own hands, and with a mix of firmness and respect, I addressed Robert. I declared that I had earned my money, and under no circumstances would I surrender control, regardless of who I was marrying. With a measured tone, I asserted that decisions about our finances and living arrangements were a mutual matter between James and me. Regarding them moving in with us, I suggested when the need arose, we would think about it in the future while also maintaining our independence and privacy as a married couple. Upon hearing this, Linda scolded me, insisting that women in their families didn't talk back to elders. Robert joined in, stating that as I was marrying their son, I needed to adhere to their living rules. He went on to express his views that modernity has ruined my womanhood and that I should be more obedient. In response, I questioned why he wasn't working and dependent on his son for money if he believed in traditional gender roles that dictate men should be the breadwinners. This seemed to piss everyone off, and Robert started to yell how disrespectful I was being. James even shot me a disapproving look and told me that I couldn't talk to his father this way. Frustration and desperation consumed me as I realized that I could never live under their suffocating control. What was really infuriating for me to see was James refusing to stand up for me in front of his parents while they continued to disrespect me and discuss taking away my financial independence. He seemed to have drastically changed, and I had no guarantee that he would have my back after our marriage. In a final plea, I asked James if he genuinely supported his parents' stance. James took a deep breath and expressed his desire to start a family with me after marriage, but insisted that if I continued working, our children would turn out like me. I looked at him in disbelief, as he argued that our kids wouldn't respect him if they found out that I was earning more than him, so I needed to give up on my career and focus on our family. Robert and Linda nodded along in agreement. Frustration and disbelief overwhelmed me. I couldn't comprehend that James was willing to prioritize outdated expectations over our relationship. I looked at him, feeling a sense of betrayal, as he stood by his parents' regressive views, unable to accept a future where my independence was compromised. I took a deep breath and, with a heavy heart, I finally said, "I want to call off the wedding." Wide-eyed disbelief painted Robert and Linda's faces as my words sank in. They immediately started to blame me for shattering their perfect family vision and how, as a woman, I needed to respect their family traditions and rules without any questions. Unyielding, I demanded James and his parents leave my house, otherwise I would call my family and the police on them. James started to plead, but I firmly asked him to leave with his parents. They eventually left in a huff. Since this incident, I have been feeling really guilty about what happened. Yet deep down, I know that I have taken a stand for myself. AITA for breaking things off with my fiancé because I didn't want to give up my financial freedom. Update 1. Since I broke off my engagement 2 days ago, I have spent all my time crying. I called my parents and asked them to come over so we could urgently talk. My family rushed over to my apartment in concern. The concern deepened when I opened the door, my face marked with tears. As I spilled the troubling news to my parents, their faces mirrored a mix of concern and empathy. My mom, usually the optimist, wore a furrowed brow as she absorbed the situation. Dad, a man of few words, wore a stern expression but offered a comforting hug. He reassured me, expressing how fortunate James's parents were that he wasn't there. Otherwise, they would have faced his wrath. I couldn't help but smile, knowing my parents would have swiftly dealt with the situation. My brothers, having developed a camaraderie with James over the past few years, were visibly stunned by the news. Their expressions revealed a mixture of shock and disbelief as they grappled with the unexpected turn of events. Despite their initial surprise, they promptly expressed that I did the right thing, offering comfort and assuring me of their unwavering support during this challenging period. As we continued to discuss the situation, I was relieved to see that I wasn't alone in my shock, as my family members too were taken aback by James's sudden change in behavior. I had been worried that I had missed these signs when we dated, but it was evident that James had skillfully concealed this aspect of himself until now. Questions flowed naturally, from the specifics of James's changed behavior to the unexpected demands put forth by his parents. We collectively expressed our surprise at witnessing a side of James we hadn't anticipated, especially in supporting his parents' unreasonable requests. The conversation swirled around the events that transpired, with each family member voicing their concerns and thoughts on the matter. Since the incident, my family has been incredibly supportive. My brothers suggested packing up James's things so they could drop them off at his parents' place, ensuring he doesn't have a reason to return here. My dad offered to change all the locks and install a camera at my driveway, so if his parents come back, I can notify them or the police right away. Meanwhile, I have been bombarded with messages and calls from James, each one filled with a mix of apologies, pleading, and frustration. His parents joined the chorus, sending messages expressing disappointment and attempting to guilt-trip me into reconsidering. The constant notifications have created a whirlwind of emotions, but amidst it all, I am holding onto the decision I made for my own well-being. Update 2. James's parents have been arrested. My hands are shaking as I am writing this, as they have just been arrested a few hours ago. A week after our breakup, while I was still trying to heal from the emotional aftermath, I heard a doorbell ring today. I noticed through the security camera that James's parents were at my doorstep. I asked them to politely leave as I didn't want to discuss anything with them. They pleaded that they were here just to talk and urged me to hear them out for the last time. I quickly texted on my family chat that his parents were at my door, and my dad replied that he was on his way to my place. Feeling confident that he was coming over, I foolishly, against my better judgment, I let them in. As his parents stepped inside, I felt even more anxious and just wanted them to leave after saying their piece. They started by apologizing to me, which completely surprised me. I politely waited for them to explain themselves, and Linda expressed remorse over her earlier criticisms of my cooking. Robert then asked me if his demand to see my finances had made me uncomfortable. I nodded, and he attempted to justify their intrusive request. They tried to sound nice, but it still felt like they wanted to control things. They kept on talking, justifying why they felt the need to control my finances. Their explanations were frustrating, claiming it was for our own good, but it only made me angrier. They insisted on their right to dictate our lives, throwing reasons at me that sounded more like excuses for their overbearing behavior. Linda insisted that as a woman, my main focus should be on raising children and managing the household, while James should be the sole breadwinner. It was so absurd that I couldn't help but laugh in frustration. I questioned how they expected me to give up my career, especially when I was the one earning twice as much as James and handling our household responsibilities. They took offense, and Robert erupted, yelling that James should worry about earning while my only concern should be the kitchen. Anger surged through me, and I was on the verge of giving him a piece of my mind. At that moment, my dad rushed in, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. He looked at me, concern in his eyes, and asked if I was okay. Just by observing my expression, he must have sensed that James's parents were once again trying to pressure me. Linda and Robert looked surprised to see my dad. He greeted them with a stern nod, acknowledging the awkward atmosphere. My dad, never one to mince words, straight up asked them what they were doing here. Robert told him that they were there to discuss the issue at hand. My dad informed them that I had already called off the wedding, so there was nothing left to discuss at this point. Linda, perhaps sensing the shift, attempted to maintain a composed demeanor. She started to explain that James and I had spent a considerable time together, and it was irrational of me to break it off so abruptly. She continued saying that they had only expressed their concerns out of love for James and our future together. Robert chimed in, emphasizing that their family followed traditional values, hence he didn't see what was so wrong with him to be the financial decision maker, while I could take on the household responsibilities just like Linda. I could sense my dad getting agitated at the moment. He listened patiently before expressing his disagreement with their perspective. My dad firmly told Robert that I was never going to give up my career for any man unless that was what I wanted. He stressed that he was a man too, yet had never imposed these absurd rules on our family. He firmly stated that such expectations of control and outdated gender roles had no place in our family. Robert's face reddened, and Linda's attempts to salvage the situation grew more desperate. They continued to defend their stance, but my dad wasn't having it. He calmly asserted that James and I were equals and our choices should be based on mutual understanding, not outdated norms. He argued that James was incapable of supporting me financially anyway, which was true. Hence, they should instead force their son to become a better man instead of asking me to give up working for the rest of my life. As the verbal tug-of-war escalated, I sat listening to them uncomfortably. Despite my dad's efforts to reason with James's parents, the conversation reached an impasse. Robert, increasingly agitated, raised his voice, asserting that they were only looking out for James's best interests. My dad, maintaining his calm demeanor, reiterated that he was doing the same and stood by my decision to break off my marriage. Amid the escalating tension, Robert's demeanor took a volatile turn. His words transformed into a barrage of insults directed at me. My dad, visibly angered by the verbal assault, struggled to maintain his own frustration. Robert continued to yell how I had wasted James's time all these years, while my dad yelled in return that it was James who had in fact been a coward all this time, while trying to hide his true feelings about his thoughts on family dynamics. Watching both my dad and Robert yell at each other, I realized that the situation was quickly spiraling out of control. James's parents' relentless persistence brought me to a breaking point, and I made the difficult decision to call the police. As the police were en route, tensions continued to rise, with Robert and Linda continuing to yell at me. When the authorities finally appeared, I urgently requested their removal to ensure the safety of everyone involved. Their visit has left me feeling deeply unsettled, and witnessing their aggressive behavior has intensified these emotions. In this tumultuous situation, I find solace in the fact that my family came to my rescue. My mom, after learning about their arrest, has offered to come and stay with me for the next few days. My brothers, fueled by anger, expressed the desire to confront James, but my dad intervened, managing to dissuade them from taking any impulsive actions. After everything that went down today, James won't stop calling. However, I currently lack the emotional energy to engage in conversation with him, and will need some time to recover from the intensity of the day. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update. A lot of people have been concerned about me since my last update, but I am here today with a much happier update. In the 3 months since that intense encounter with James's parents, I have experienced a significant transformation. Breaking off the engagement was undoubtedly a tough decision, and initially I grappled with guilt. However, deep down, I knew I had stood up for myself and my principles. My emotional healing has been supported by my incredible family. They rallied around me, providing unwavering comfort and understanding. My mom stayed with me for a long time until I could feel safe enough to live on my own. My dad came to visit me every morning, and we started going out for walks, which has sort of become a routine for us now. I love spending time with him during our walks. My brothers helped out wherever they can, and their actions speak louder than words, reaffirming that I am not alone in my decision. James has continued to reach out, his messages flooded with apologies and pleas. He explained that after our engagement he was gaslighted by his parents and he went along with their demands. He urged me to reconsider, saying that this won't ever happen again. However, I have stood firm in my decision and let him know that I am done with him and his family. I have blocked all of them, making sure that they can never disturb my mental peace ever again. As for my career and financial independence, I have been thriving. The incident reinforced my commitment to maintaining control over my finances. I have excelled in my job, embracing the sense of empowerment that comes with financial autonomy. I have also found solace in reconnecting with friends and pursuing personal interests. The support network around me has been instrumental in my journey of rediscovering myself as a single gal after so long. Looking back, I recognize that breaking off the engagement was the right choice. It allowed me to reclaim my agency, prioritize my happiness, and foster personal growth. If there's any advice I could give to any young woman reading this, it's never to let anyone control you in the name of love. Stay tuned for more stories from Our Girl Relationships.